release.
What's poppin', players? Welcome to another edition of Breaking Badger News. I am your host, as always, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons-kin, Max Darrett, and joining me for this particular edition of this series, I have the lovely, the pun master, the pussycat punisher, the insert something witty and, a play on words here. She is Hannah Wallen. Hannah, how you doing today?
Hello. Inserting things is rape, right? We're going to be in big trouble.
Okay, listen, Hannah. Everything you do here is consensual. That's what you signed up for before we even started doing this.
That works for me.
Okay, well, good, because otherwise I'd be in big trouble. So, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of consent, speaking of inserting things where they shouldn't be, Obama, we're going to be talking about a piece of legislation that has gotten a lot of backlash, not just in terms of the political realm, but just in terms of people that live in the United States. We are, of course, talking about Title IX. And there's been a bit of a pushback against Title IX this past week, specifically from a woman named Betsy DeVos. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. Now, in case you don't know who she is the Education Secretary currently under the Donald Trump administration. And this past Thursday, September the 7th, she gave a speech criticizing Title IX on September 7th at George Mason University. She says that her department would, quote-unquote, revise its existing guidance for complying with Title IX, specifically the federal government's, quote, guidance compelling colleges to adjudicate sexual assault disputes between students, rather than leave matters to the criminal justice system. Other tactics DeVos wants to overturn include the following. In case some of you don't know what Title IX is, these are some things that the university can do, and the federal government can force the university to do. In this particular case, they include minimum requirement of 51% certainty that an accused student is guilty before they are expelled. As well, discouragement of university officials from cross-examining the students involved. Now, of course, the reason why they don't want the officials to do this is because doing that might be too traumatizing for the survivor. Excuse me. DeVos cited purpose for doing this is as follows. Quote, the notion that a school must diminish due process rights to better serve the victim only creates more victims. Hear, hear. We will seek public feedback and combine institutional knowledge, professional expertise, and the experiences of students to replace the current approach with a workable, effective, and fair system. Now, in case some of you aren't too familiar with the legacy of Title IX, allow me to provide you with a couple of examples that I've cited from Reason.com. In this particular article that I'm citing, there were numerous examples, but I won't be able to cite them all, obviously, for time. But just to give you an idea of what can happen if somebody wants to invoke a Title IX complaint. Here's one from Stony Brook University. Apparently, the current system forced a supposed victim of sexual assault to prepare an opening statement, fix exhibits, and find witnesses at a university disciplinary I can't talk today, and find witnesses at a university disciplinary hearing without any legal training whatsoever. So aside from the whole problem involved with false accusations, it can also create a more traumatizing experience from those that are actually trying to seek justice and who are actual victims of this terrible, terrible crime. Moving on, the University of Tennessee. You're not going to believe this. This is absolutely true. A quiz asked a student a stupid question. What is the name of your instructor? Well, the student didn't know and came up with the name Sarah Jackson. I guess it's just equivalent to what you would use in the legal system, like John Doe. He just came up with something random. Because Sarah Jackson, the name, is apparently shared by a famous model that the student wasn't aware of, the instructor gave the student a 0, accused him of sexual harassment, and his university opened an investigation against him. That is 100% true. I'm not lying to you. And finally, before I hand this over to Hannah, I want to cite this other unbelievable and terrible instance from the University of Texas, Arlington. A gay student claimed his classmate, named Thomas Clock, told him to, quote, consider killing himself. Clock said that the accuser came onto him in a sexual manner and didn't appreciate rejection. When the gay student filed a Title IX complaint against Clock, he committed suicide. Now, Hannah, you're far more involved with this type of advocacy than I am. I'll leave the floor to you, but before I do, I just want to ask you a key question and just ask you to expand upon it a little bit. Obviously, this is a terrible law for people that are falsely accused, but it's also evidently a poor law for women and men who are victims of rape and sexual violence to be able to attain justice for themselves. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, and I've got a couple of reasons, not the least of which is the fact that the repercussions that an accused student faces if found responsible on university campus, while they're obviously far too harsh for somebody who is actually innocent, they shouldn't face any repercussions. If the student is guilty of a predatory sexual misconduct act, where they've actually done something violent to somebody, or taken advantage of a state of incapacity or something like that, that should be that should be dealt with in the court system, so that the individual will be incarcerated or otherwise handled by the court system, so that they have the option to order treatment and so on for this individual, rather than them just moving on to another school or dropping out of school and disappearing into the workforce. It's really not good that students are using the school's judicial system as a substitute for the real judicial system. Even a minor sex offense is still a predatory act if you're forcing yourself on someone or taking advantage of a state where they can't refuse. So, yeah, no, it's bad all around. And I also want to point out, like, these three cases are just absolutely insane cases. And there's been some other ones that were equally insane. There's a couple of cases in which third parties decided that interactions that were consensual between two students that the third party didn't have control over was sexual misconduct, where one of the students was victimizing the other, and went and filed a complaint on behalf of the student that they thought was being victimized, and investigations were opened. And even though the student accused of being victimized, I don't know another way to say that, the student on whose behalf the complaint was filed, came out and said, no, nothing was done to me. I'm not a victim of anything. This was all consensual. We were playing around, or I did what I wanted to do, and things like that. The supposed offending party was still found responsible, or the hearing continued on, and the investigation continued on, and so on. So this has been insane, absolutely insane.
Yeah, how is that example that you just cited not an example of how bad vigilante justice can be carried out? And what's more shocking is the fact that it's done with the authority of the federal government.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say it's a form of sexual harassment. You got a couple who they're involved with each other consensually. You have a third party that comes along and tries to use an accusation to interfere in their relationship. That's harassment. That's plain old harassment. There is nothing else, that you can say about it other than that. I mean, it's if the individual on whose behalf they're filing a complaint doesn't want a complaint filed and doesn't feel victimized and is consenting to whatever activity they're engaged in, it's not somebody else's business to come along and say, oh, you're a victim, So the whole thing is just... the good news in this is we now have a government official acknowledging that the falsely accused are victims of being falsely accused, that victimizes somebody. That is a huge step forward. It's absolutely colossal, and it's something to be celebrated. We also have as a victory, she has mentioned due process as a right, and she has stated that it is vital. That's an amazing thing. That's something that we should also celebrate. The fact that she is basically saying it's just important to serve both sides of a case like this, that's vital, and that's wonderful, and it's something that should be celebrated. Now, with her saying, "We will seek public feedback and combine institutional knowledge, professional expertise, and the experiences of students to replace the current approach with a workable, effective, and fair system." That's her saying, "Contact me," to everyone. That's her saying, "I want to know what the American people think." And the thing that needs to be done now is people need to reach out to the education department. And they can do that by emailing ocr@ed.gov. That's ocr@ed.gov. And telling Betsy DeVos what they think. What needs to be done, what needs to be changed, why due process is important, why it's important to ensure that if there is a criminal act, that it's not just investigated by the school, but also by the legal system, and that exculpatory evidence is not excluded from these cases so that somebody isn't wrongfully kept from continuing their education through to its logical conclusion.
Emailing your public representatives, that's really the best way in most circumstances to be able to get things done on a wide scale, at least from my personal experience. And before we sign off, I just want to get this one other thing across that I think is really important. If you're like me and you're not a men's rights activist, the issues of women are very important to me because I've grown up predominantly around women, and I've grown up, unfortunately, among a lot of women who have been the victims of sexual assault and rape. It's really important to me that we get across how important it is that everybody engages in due process, even though justice isn't always served, obviously because our justice system isn't perfect. It's the best way about trying to go about it. Evidently, because like with the example that I just gave of Stony Brook, how is the current system that we have right now, where you have a woman who is trying to provide her own defense without legal counsel, without trying to make sure that the best defense is presented possible so that justice can be carried out, how is that not an example of traumatizing the supposed victim? Obviously, something needs to be done, and Title IX isn't the best way to do it. And for those who are going to accuse Betsy DeVos of, trying to give rapists a free pass, no. This is the best way that we can make sure that scumbags who think it's okay to take advantage of people in this way can be punished to the full extent of the law. Because in my opinion, aside from murder, rape is the worst thing that you can do to another human being. I know there are people that disagree with me on that, but it's because it's an act that invalidates somebody's physical, emotional, and sexual personhood in such a way. And I want to make sure that anybody who does that is punished in the most insurable way where we can actually get something done. And due process is the way to go about that. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we'd love to hear what you think in the comment section below. If you agree with us or disagree with us, it doesn't matter. We'd love to hear what you guys think. Keep this conversation going. If you like this particular video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more content like this, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out a lot. And will give us a little bit more faith in humanity, considering the fact that, Jonathan McIntosh, he just, got like 100,000 subscribers in the last 4 days, whereas we've been working on, I've been working on my channel, and HoneyBadgerRadio has been working on their respective channel for the last few years. We really appreciate the support. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this particular episode. We'll have more episodes coming out again in the future. Have a lovely, lovely day.